Hello, gorgeous, and welcome to the Women on Top podcast. I'm your host, Valerie Lynn, and with over 15 years of business experience, I became truly passionate about finding ways to support and hear from way more women. And what we know to be true is that women thrive when they are in their favorite position, on top in business, in relationships, in personal growth, and on top in being real and authentic to who the hell they are. So I invite you to sit back and enjoy the Women on Top podcast. Well, thank you again for being here, Katherine. I am so looking forward to this conversation. And so for everyone listening in, welcome back to another episode of the Women on Top. Today, I have been so eager to record this conversation. I have with me Katherine Moloney. I believe that's how you pronounce your last name. Perfect. And she is somebody that I have been following for a while now. So I've been doing the Instagram stalking, a little bit of LinkedIn as well. She is somebody who is a female leader in the aviation industry, which I am just really stoked about. I've been looking forward to bringing somebody in the aviation industry into our podcast. And she has over 7 years of experience in the industry. And she also has a private pilot license with both a PPLH and a PPLA license. And I want to talk a little bit more about that when we get into it, because obviously I don't understand the lingo just as much as she does. But she's a former Department for Transport ambassador and also is the founder of Elevate Her Aviation, which I just am so excited to discuss more today. She has amassed also a large social media following with over 230,000 followers, which really the whole idea of her social media and her purpose is to help encourage and inspire, especially women, to get into aviation. And so, Katherine, thank you so much for being willing to be part of the show today. I am so grateful.
Thank you so
here.
much for having me on. No, I've been really looking forward to it.
Yeah. Okay. So I actually have a selfish question that I would love to start out with. I used to be terrified of flying. Like personally, I would do anything to like even just commercial airplane, little flights. I'm so much better now. Love to travel, love flying, and have a weird obsession with kind of like watching all of like the videos, especially things that you post. But I've always been wanting to ask this question to a pilot, which is, have you ever been scared? Like, truly, I want to know.
Yeah, for sure. And I used to be a really bad commercial flyer before I learned to fly. So, well, not really bad, but, I definitely had trepidation when I went flying and, different aspects around it used to make me quite anxious. But to me, the problem that caused that kind of anxiousness was a lack of information. And I think that's the same for a lot of people who maybe have fear around flying or feel a little bit anxious when they get on either, a general aviation aircraft or a commercial aircraft. It's just a lack of kind of knowledge about what's actually going on. Because I'm a bit of a control freak naturally, like that is who I am. And I think that certainly when I started to learn more about flying and, I was the one who was flying the plane itself, then, that kind of fear went away because knowledge is power at the end of the day. And I think the more you know about things, the more you know about turbulence, for instance, and what that is and understand what that is, I think the fear kind of goes away. But yeah, certainly, I think if, flying is an amazing, amazing thing to do, but it's something you have to have a really healthy respect for. You are dealing with the elements. The air is, a very powerful element. And there's so many different factors when it comes to flying that I do think that while you don't want to be flying scared, obviously, it is a good thing to have a healthy respect for what you're doing,
Right. Yeah. So have you had moments when you're by yourself, especially being a private pilot? I feel like you fly a lot without somebody else there who knows what they're doing. So have you had any moments where you're up there thinking, oh crap, like what do I do now?
No, I have. Honestly, I haven't. And I think that I probably would be right in saying that most private pilots and commercial pilots don't have moments like that, really, not like a real, like, oh my God moment, because if you're in that place, something very, very bad has happened. And, we do so much training. We do so much recurrency training. There's so much that we do surrounding getting a pilot's license and surround learning to fly that you kind of have a fix for it, not a fix, but you have a scenario for everything. And well, before we go flying, we do think about these scenarios in our head. Like, what if we lost an engine here? What if, something went wrong? What if we lost our radio here? What would we do? And these are things that are really drilled in from you from very, very early on flying. So, certainly I've had moments where I've had to use my brain and go, okay, what are we going to do here? But, you're not going to panic. Stay calm. You're flying the aircraft at the end of the day. You're in control. And yeah, it's all about making the right decisions. But, we are very fortunate, especially in the UK and the US, or actually the flying standard is pretty good all over the world. But in the UK, from my perspective, we're drilled so thoroughly, in all aspects of different emergencies that, yeah, you shouldn't really have a moment where you're like, oh my God, this is a complete, disaster scenario. You should feel calm enough to be able to take a next step towards, okay, how do we fix this?
Yeah. I really actually appreciate hearing that, both from the perspective of this conversation, but also from the passenger perspective. Mm-hmm. So thank you for sharing that. It's always helpful to understand how well trained, like how truly thoughtful, the pilots are really thinking about all of these things. And so, we kind of know that and assume that, but it's helpful to hear. I actually did have the opportunity to do a private flying lesson, like an introductory flight, basically, in the little airport here. And it was amazing, to your point, how much more calm I felt and how much more I was in control. And that took away some of the, oh gosh, it's bumpy, because it's a different level of experience when you're the one behind the, not
That's
behind
so
the wheel, but behind.
No, it's so true though. And when you're doing it yourself, you know what you're doing, like you're in control. You're like, okay, well, I'm going to turn right now. So I'm expecting to feel that,
Right.
When you're a passenger, any turns, anything, you're like, oh my goodness, what's going on here? Because you're not the one inputting that action. So yeah, I think I would actually, advise anyone who's got a little bit of fear of flying to maybe just have a trial lesson, because I think that a lot of that, again, is that closing that knowledge gap, and it's no one's fault. There's a lot of things going on when you're flying, and, a lot of things are very unnatural. Like we're not born with wings, it's an unnatural experience. And I think anything you can do to kind of close that gap in your head to what you're experiencing versus what's going on will really help.
It's very true. And that's a good point. I would recommend. So to anybody who is listening that maybe is a little trepidatious about flying, it's a good idea, actually. Like, not only was it an amazing experience for me and it was beautiful, you're up there and have views that you would never have otherwise. And they give you enough control. I mean, I really felt like, it's an introductory lesson. They're not going to let me take off or land, thank goodness. But they give you enough control where you do feel like you have a different perspective. So I think that's a really good tip as well. So I want to get into a little bit of where this love came from and kind of that journey. I know you've had quite a journey of getting into flying. So can you just kind of walk us through some of that? Like, what were the steps that you took to get here?
So my journey into aviation was perhaps a little bit different to some of the more kind of classic stories of people going, oh, I wanted to fly since I was 4 or 5. Because even though I come from an aviation family and my dad's a pilot, I never considered doing aviation myself, ever.
Really?
I was kind of surrounded by it, but I always thought that's not for me. I could never do that. And it's funny, actually, because even when I was at school, we went through quite extensive aptitude testing, and mine came back saying I should apply to the RAF as a pilot. And I literally threw it away. I was like, that's not me. I could never do that. Which is really funny. Now I look back, I'm like, wow, okay, maybe there is something in those tests. Maybe I should have paid more attention. But, I kind of went on, I left school, I did a few other jobs. And I went to school straight away. I didn't go to uni or anything like that. I was really dead on wanting to go to work. That's what I wanted to do. And then I had a job at Shoreham Airport, which is where I learned to fly. Sometimes now it's called Brighton City Airport for anyone who's interested. But I was picking and packing in the warehouse on this airport. And it was for an aviation company, and I became more interested just by handling the materials and the situations and, just hearing about people's stories. And so I was like, you know what, maybe I should just give it a go. And my dad actually was very instrumental in that. He was like, no, just go have a trial lesson. Like, the worst comes to worst and you just have a good time. Like, why not? You learn a bit and go for it. So on the airfield, there's a few flight schools, but there was one helicopter flight school very close by. And I always thought helicopters were really cool. And I'd always had that kind of interest there. So I thought, you know what, I'm only going to do this once, so it doesn't matter. I'm going to go have a helicopter trial lesson, why does it matter? And honestly, that flight changed my life because, again, it was that action of taking the controls myself. That is what empowered me to think, I can do this. Like, maybe I do belong here. And it's something that I kind of pushed so far back in my mind because I was like, oh, I'm not that person. But actually, when you're sat there and you're flying, you're going, oh my God, maybe I am this person. Maybe I can do it. Which was quite an amazing experience. And then, landed and was like, okay, I really want to do this. So I went on and signed up to do my PPLH, my helicopter license. So PPL is in the UK is private pilot license. So private pilot license helicopter is what I did first. And I got my PPLH when I was 19. And then I continued working at the same aviation company. I worked in pretty much every single other aspect. I've been in a shop, been to shows, done trade, marketing, mail order, all kinds of different aspects. And while I was doing that, I was still still flying while I was working. And after about 4 years of flying helicopters, I actually had a trial lesson for a fixed wing aircraft. This was actually in 2020 because we were all locked down and I was kind of going around my brain about what I could do next and, what kind of other areas there were to try in aviation. And the answer is, there is so much to try in aviation. And, I was closing myself off to so many other experiences and things I could learn, from tailwheel to aerobatics to gliding, fixed wing is so varied. So I put myself in for a trial lesson and rocked up and was like, yeah, let's give it a go. Again, I loved it. It was very, very different, which presented, another challenge to me. And yeah, signed up to do that in 2020. So not the best time to sign up to do a pilot's license, but it was great. I had an amazing instructor. He was fabulous, really supported me during my training, was just a really, really good instructor, massively improved my standard of aviating. And I learned a lot. And yeah, I got my fixed wing license in 2022 when I was 23. And yeah, that's kind of I've been, very fortunate to have lots of different experiences in aviation from aerobatics to warbirds to tail wheel to gliding to, even microlights. I've been checked out on microlights. But that's one of the things I love about flying. There's always a new challenge. There's always something to learn and there's always something new to experience.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a couple questions. So with the helicopter, that feels like very cool, but also, again, very terrifying. So because to me, if something goes wrong with the propeller, that's that. And
well, if something goes wrong with the propeller on a helicopter, you are in trouble because it doesn't No, I mean, look, helicopters are a different beast. They are, there's a lot of moving parts there. There's a lot of stuff going on, but and obviously if you do have a problem, it's quite time critical, where I'd say, and again, fixed wing, if you have a problem, clearly you need to get that under control, swiftly. But in helicopter, I would say that time is kind of more urgent with any issues. But again, we are so well drilled with helicopters. We do practice something called auto rotation, which is where essentially you close the throttle and you glide the helicopter down. And we do this so many times during training till it is literally like your knee-jerk reaction. If something goes wrong, you go straight into that mode of flying. Like, we're so well drilled. And, just because something's hard doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. Just because it's a challenge doesn't mean that we're not capable of meeting that challenge and doing it, So, and believe me, I would have been voted in my school least likely to fly anything in my life ever. So if I can do it, anyone can do it, because, when it comes to flying, there's only the differences. You either have had the training or you haven't.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good perspective about the challenge as well. And so I would imagine there's some sort of rush or something that you get, especially from helicopters. It seems like there's a unique love with flying helicopters. So what is that for you? And I also want to know, during this time when you are getting your licenses and learning how to fly, are you pursuing another career at that time? What's that journey been like?
Yeah, so when I was learning to fly helicopters, there is definitely, I think because they are so tricky, there is definitely an element that you want to master it. Like you really want to do your best. And I remember even learning to hover, you can't do it. You can't do it at all. And you're like, what is going on? And then your instructor takes control and it's just perfect. And you're like, what am I not doing? And you'll be out there for like an hour just, sweating like crazy, like, what is going on? Why can't I do this? And then suddenly one day you can just do it. And you're like, that's what it is. And, when you are learning something like that, as soon as you land, even though you're absolutely knackered, you want to go, right, okay, let's go up again because I can do it this time. It's just, it is a real challenge. And I think when you do look back and you've kind of had those milestones, like you've done your first solo, you've done your cross country qualifier, you passed the exams, you're like, wow, I'm actually doing this, Yeah. And this may sound really silly, but I had quite a key moment very early on in my flying where it probably was like 10 hours in when I looked at the panel and I thought, I know what everything on this panel does. And I know that sounds really weird, but from someone who really did not pitch themselves ever getting into anything like aviation, I was like, wow, I actually know what every single one of those dials does and how I can affect it. And, I know that's a really small thing, but for me, it's like as a young woman getting into, the real world, I was like, wow, that's a big moment for me. Some people might think that sounds silly, but
no, I think it sounds really empowering because if you can look at that and think, I actually feel comfortable and have the knowledge, again, like you said, to know all of this in front of me, that feels like an element that you can't buy that, right? Like that's an element of training experience and all of that blood, sweat and tears, like to put it that way.
You're the only person who can do it. Anyway, to answer the second part of your question, while I was, definitely while I was learning to fly, I had loads of challenges. It was not an easy ride. And, everyone's journey in aviation is different and looks different. And, I've been incredibly fortunate with my journey in aviation, but certainly for me, probably the biggest challenges were mental. In terms of just believing that I could do it and having that resilience and that self-belief to, even when you have a bad lesson, which happens to everyone when you're learning something new, you're going to have, stuff happen, but to go back out there and be like, no, I can overcome this. I can achieve this. That was probably my biggest challenge, but also probably the biggest success for me personally was actually making it through. I know that sounds maybe a bit dramatic, but it's, when we talk about learning to fly, it is a journey, and it takes a lot while, so that for me, definitely my biggest challenges were in my head, for going against myself and going, no, you can do this.
Yeah. Okay. So I actually really love that you're touching on that, because I think that so many people experience this, whether it's flying or they're learning something new for themselves that they really want to, but they're coming up against that resistance. So who was it or what is it for you that during those moments pushed you forward? Because I'm guessing this wasn't your full-time career at the time.
Yeah. So, absolutely. So I was obviously learning to fly while I was working at Transair, doing all kinds of, like I said, mail order trade, like lots of other different aspects of that job. And really my biggest supports at that time were my instructors. It's really important that you have a great instructor that you can really rely on, because you're sat next to them, well, when it comes to helicopters, for like 70 hours. That's a long time. You have to really get on with them. It's important that you gel with them and you find someone that you really respond to. And similarly for fixed wing, I spent 45 hours sat next to Toby, who was my instructor. And you have to get on with them. But, they are your biggest support and they are your biggest kind of, mentor. But also my dad, my dad is a brilliant pilot, and he has always been a great support and mentor throughout my flying. But, kind of, it's interesting because more recently, actually, I've experienced my own challenges with starting Elevate Her and, going through that journey. So, and then I would say I didn't have this back then, but now it's the women I work with every day. And I'm so glad, I'm so happy that I have that now, because we all have a there's a huge group of us, huge community that support each other every day and understand what each other is going through and are there to support each other. So that is so amazing to have now. But certainly during my flight training, my instructors and my dad were really, really key supports.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. So I want to know about Elevate Her. How did that start? And was that partially a vision because it was something that you wish would have existed when you were going through it?
Yeah, absolutely. So all throughout my flight training, both times, both licenses, I never met another female pilot or trained with them or met another female examiner which is not uncommon,
right.
and I kind of, although again, this is not to detract from the amazing male instructors and mentors that I've had in my career, because I wouldn't be here today without them. But I definitely felt like I was missing that thing, looking at someone and going, wow, I want to be like you when I grow up. Like I could see myself in you.
Yes.
So what I decided to do after I finished my flight training was put out an open invitation to any women in any aviation careers and just to go, okay, come to lunch. This is at Brighton City Airport. I hired out a room, got a couple of plates of sandwiches, and just really hoped people would turn up, which to be honest was a bit of a rogue move because I'm not an overly outgoing. I would say to people like I'm an introvert masquerading as an extrovert. So that was very much out of my comfort zone. But it was important to me. And I was so fortunate on that day. We had 40 women attend. And the atmosphere was just electric. Everyone was coming together, talking, sharing stories, sharing things that, we could all relate to, and things that we perhaps may not have spoken about before, just because we really related to each other. And I came away from that event and I was like, wow, that really had an impact on me. And those amazing women I met that day had such a big impact. I was like, I really want to take this forward in a more meaningful way. And another problem we have in aviation is that it's really hard to get all the information. There's some brilliant schemes out there, like scholarships, cadet schemes, all kinds of pathways into different aviation careers, but the information is actually really hard to find unless you know exactly what you're looking for. So I wanted to create a platform where all of that was really accessible, easy to get to, but also had a community aspect as well. And that's kind of where Elevate Her came from. So I basically just went away for 6 months, created a website and got all the information, and then launched it in 2023.
Wow, that's amazing. And so this has now become your full-time passion, mission, all of the above, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Can you expand on some of the pillars and the priorities that you have within Elevate Her?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of to paraphrase what we do. So we're an online resource platform and community which is dedicated to raising the percentage of women in aviation globally. So that is what we do. And we work across 4 main pillars. So one is events. So we host multiple events all over the world. One is outreach. So we provide free resources and outreach materials and outreach events for schools. Research, which is one. So we do a lot of research regarding women in aviation and girls in aviation. We've partnered with the DFT and also UN Women UK on the research as well. And also our last kind of area we work through is social media. So we try and, get lots of young people involved through social media. It's a great platform to engage with, particularly with young people, and show them aviation careers and what's possible. So those are kind of areas that we work across. So since our launch, we have had nearly 7 million views on social media. We have thousands of members now all over the world in over 30 countries. Our membership is completely free for life. So that's where we're a little bit different, because personally, I don't want to contribute to any cost barriers for anyone getting into aviation, particularly young people. And that was really important to me that we did that and it was accessible to everyone. We host lots and lots of events, webinars, all kinds of stuff going on. But, it's been an amazing journey. We've grown from just me to now we have a team of 23 volunteers who work across our platforms. So, it's been an amazing journey. And, I'd love to sit here and say it's all me, but that's absolutely not true. We have an amazing team and they're all phenomenal and have contributed so much of their time. Like all of these women, just amazing air traffic controllers, engineers, pilots, and they're giving up their time to bring the next generation through and, support those women who are already in the industry. And I just think it's been fabulous.
Yeah, I really love that you are doing this because I don't see much out there that helps contribute to women being in aviation in the same way, which is also why it was really important that I reached out to you. And again, thank you so much for your time, because I think it's really meaningful to see women come together in this kind of way. And again, it gives other women proof of what's possible, especially for that next generation who maybe is having a hard time finding the information, like you said, or just is curious, but doesn't really know where to turn to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I really, it's really empowering to hear about. And I'm curious also, as you were speaking about this, for women who are in this group and just kind of what you've witnessed, I guess, what are some of the challenges that women face on the whole being in the aviation industry?
Yeah, so this is a very hard to boil down to kind of one thing. There's a lot of different factors that are involved, and even, the history of women in aviation is very short. We haven't been in it that long. We haven't been in the game too long, really. I mean, aviation itself is very short, but you look, even in the UK, I believe we didn't have female RAF jet pilots until the 1990s. So, it's quite a short history, and there's still, I think people forget that there is quite a big gap. Even in the UK today, only 5% of pilots are women, which is a staggeringly low statistic. And that's pretty much mirrored throughout the world. In fact, India has the highest percentage of female pilots. It's 15%.
I didn't know that. Wow.
So this is actually really interesting. So this is something that Elevate Her did some research on, and we actually wrote Maddie Dooley, who one of our amazing blog writers, and she's also a pilot as well, wrote this amazing blog on it. So feel free to check it out on our website if you like. But essentially, it boils down to in India, they have really good maternity care, and not maternity care, but like childcare for pilots, female pilots who have kids, and they also have a slightly different kind of family structure. So they quite often have, grandparents and then parents living in the same house. So childcare is quite accessible, and that has allowed a lot of women to go back and do these roles, which is really, really exciting. That is one challenge which has stopped a lot of women in aviation is childcare and maternity, because it's not really set up for that. I mean, don't get me wrong, there has been improvements made recently, but it's still a huge factor as to, it's such a huge commitment to get that license, to get into a commercial career. And then by the time you do, you're kind of like in your 30s, and then you have to pick, which is wrong, I believe. But again, finding a way forward for it takes a lot of rejigging, a lot of research, a lot of, seeing what can be made possible. So that's definitely one factor. And then in terms of boiling down everything else, and again, there's lots of different facets to this, I would say it's just not feeling like you belong there. And this can be coming from multiple different angles, like most aviation companies and flight training organizations, they don't always provide female uniform. So airlines are pretty good at this now, but definitely, coming into the industry when you're younger, there's not always female uniform. There's not always female toilet facilities. There's not always, things like that. That definitely, although they're not, people probably would say it's not a direct barrier. No one's telling you can't do this anymore. It just reinforces that message of you don't belong here, this isn't for you. So that's really what we're trying to tackle through our research, as well as learning these barriers and learning the perceptions of women coming into the industry and go, right, okay, how can we fix that? So like the uniform one's easy. Have a women's shirt available, have high vis that are size small, not just size large. And these are small things, but they make a really, really big difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can't even imagine, because I'm not in an industry that is male dominated, but I can't imagine going into work and not having the right toilet facility or the right clothing. And just, I think, these, again, like you kind of mentioned, they sound small maybe, but it plays into your subconscious over and over when that's repeated. Yeah. So it's really, I didn't realize the low levels, the numbers of women that are in aviation either.
Well, yeah. So this is the interesting thing, because I think because the numbers are quite low, there is an element of we're grateful just to be here. And women obviously don't, it's an uncomfortable situation to put yourself forward and go, oh no, actually I would like a women's shirt, or I want women's work trousers and work shoes, because then you don't want to be the trouble, So I feel like there is an element of that, of women just, putting up with it and just being like, you know what, I'm in the career that I want to be in, and that's enough, like I can deal with it. And actually that was one of the things we really struggled with our research, was women being kind of straight about what was going on, because women are so easy to make it just happen. We're so good at just making it happen in whatever way we can. So it's been quite difficult to kind of root out a lot of the information. So but yeah, no, it's been absolutely fascinating, honestly, the response we've had to research, and obviously all the responses themselves have been incredibly interesting, and I hope will really fuel change and in the industry, and particularly around areas like uniform, like maternity, like facilities. I really do think it's going to have a big impact.
Yes, absolutely. And what a good, again, like mission and work that you're doing that means something to you and to the volunteers that are contributing, and to actually then get to witness maybe these small changes get implemented. That probably feels the most rewarding.
That will be phase 2.
Yes, so that
yeah, we're very much, we've got like a section of 3 surveys that we're doing to collect the initial data. We're about to start the second survey to collect more in-depth data regarding uniforms, equipment, etc. And then our last one will be on maternity and childcare. And then we will put it all together and go, right, guys, this is the plan. So, but it's really exciting to see that moving forward. And I really do think it's funny, it kind of starts from the ground up and also from the top down, if that makes sense. And then somewhere in the middle, it's gonna level out. But I really do believe that this is the time, like now is the time to really make a difference. It's 2025. Do you know what I mean? Like these things need to be rectified, especially the simple things that are easy to be done. Why are they not done?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm kind of just sitting here like, oh my gosh, like, I guess, yes, we're glad to be here in terms of women being, in aviation, but wow, we also have a long way to go.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes my blood boil a little bit, in the sense of like, we shouldn't just be like, like you said, come on. Like, this is like time to raise the standard here.
Definitely. And like it's amazing, because we've also had so many supportive men, who've come on board with us, and who are, dads themselves, or, their partners who are in aviation, or, or siblings, or whatever. And there is an appetite for, for this to change, which has really been really lovely to see.
Absolutely. I just love this is for commercial pilot, the big passenger planes, but anytime there's a female pilot, I always feel so good.
I know. It's so funny, actually, on our core team group chat, Elevate Her, two of our team actually, they had an all-female flight deck, and they had to send a photo. They were like, oh my goodness.
I love it. I actually,
it's funny, isn't it?
Yes. I wrote down that the other day. I just was thinking about, women in different industries. And I was like, gosh, they need an airline where anyone can, fly on the airline, but the staff and crew are all female.
Yeah.
I don't know if that exists.
They have done a couple, I think, International Women's Day type flights like that. And it's really amazing to see. Like, it is really amazing. And, this is kind of, to me, it's so inspiring, but I also understand the other side of the argument, because certainly when I launched Elevate Her, and certainly before I launched it, I was thinking, do we need this? Again, like then it was 2023. Like, do we need an organization for women? Like, is this what we should be doing? Because at the end of the day, the aircraft doesn't know who's flying it. That's the honest truth. But when I really thought about it, and I thought about my journey, and I thought about the percentages of women that were in the industry, I thought, you know what, for now it is really needed. And although the cockpit is completely neutral, doesn't care who's flying it, the journey to it is not. And, like they will say that talent is distributed equally, but opportunity isn't. And this is kind of what I come back to when I launched Elevate Her. And I was like, you know what, for now, this is really needed. We need to see those female role models. We need to see, these programs, these cadet schemes supporting women actively and doing outreach that kind of targets young girls and change those perceptions from a young age. Because at the moment, for me anyway, this is just my personal opinion, this disparity is so high that we need to actively do something. And, one day I don't want Elevate Her to be here forever. I don't want to be talking about this in 10 years time. I don't want to be talking about it. I want it just to be Elevate. I want to drop the her. That would be the dream. But, for now, I think it is definitely the right cause and how we make tangible change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it does matter to be able to witness that, like what you were saying. Yes, the cockpit is neutral, but also people are watching more than you think they are. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, you have the social media, which is great. And it's wonderful to see this come together. And I think it really helps people think differently. And that isn't just women. I think it's men too, to think like, wow, this is a shift. And how can we support it? So what's the next, I mean, you kind of explained a little bit, but like, what is the mission overall? When you look at long-term, where do you see yourself, in addition to dropping the her and it just becoming Elevate? What's the dream there?
Yeah. So the dream has got to be, I mean, I would love to say 50% women in aviation. I don't know whether we will get there right now, but then it's interesting actually, when you look at the numbers of aviation overall, 30% of aviation is women. They're just not in key roles like air traffic control, like pilot roles, like engineering roles. They're in, not that other roles aren't key, but those are what we would classify as kind of key roles. So who knows, maybe we could get to 50% women in aviation, because, I get this all the time, oh, girls just aren't interested. And I'm like, well, it's funny you should say that, because I didn't think I was interested. And then I gave it a go and I was like, wow, I'm very much interested. So I feel like if we could really change that perception, and again, from a bit of a, bottom up, top down approach of social media and also at school end and, all the other things we do with events, etc. I really think we could get that percentage up. What I would like to see in, let's say, the next 5 years is an actual marked rise in the percentage of female pilots. That's what I'd like to start to see. And just to start seeing that number kind of ticking forward, because I think there will reach a point where we'll get to that critical mass. And it's like, right, okay, this isn't the thing anymore, That's what I'd like to see. I know that's a very, very broad goal. And, all the ways that we can achieve it is kind of what I've been saying before, with changing perceptions, outreach, research, all of those kind of elements really, really feed into it. But yeah, I think the goal has got to be to actually see that number rise. It's time. Like, that number has not risen pretty much since the beginning of the industry. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it is time for it to change.
Absolutely. I'm so excited for you. And I feel like this is the time, like this is the perfect time. You've got your work cut out for you. You're seeing the appetite for it. And just like, I just think of, imagine if you had that, like, imagine if you had this group of women that were pulling you forward and kind of just like, it's a different energy. I mean, I'm not, the women on top doesn't exist because I don't love men as well, right? Like, this is not an anti-male situation. This is just very pro-female in the sense that
it's not anti-men, it's pro-women.
Yes, right. Absolutely. Because I think sometimes there's this idea that you're a feminist, it means you don't like men. That's not true. No. I just really want to promote women doing work that is meaningful, and also especially industries like this where we've never really seen it highlighted before. And I think that's so critical. So I love that this has become a passion of yours, and that you can just like feel the love that you have for the people that you're working with.
I do love all the women I work with. And, it's funny you said, oh, imagine if you had it when you were younger. We say this so often. It's funny. Like, we really do say it so often when we're like, wow, like young Katherine is screaming right now. Like, she would be so excited to see this. And, all of my team, all of our younger selves would have been so excited to see this. And hopefully it will make a difference to those young people now who are coming in, and they can see it and go, you know what, I can be part of something and I can absolutely do this. And maybe even just give it a go, because one of the biggest things that Elevate Her actually has taught me is that although it's very much about aviation, it's so much more about women. And, when I was younger, getting into the industry and learning to fly, I was quite shy. I was very, lacking in self-confidence, as I think a lot of young people are. And that journey of learning to fly, that taught me so much as a person, taught me about resilience, about believing in myself. And I think that even if, young women and just young people in general gave flying a go or gave aviation a go, even if they didn't continue with it, even if it wasn't their career and they were like, you know what, I tried that once, that was fun, but not for me, it would do a lot to teach them about themselves and improve their own self-confidence. And it's as much about that as anything else.
Right. Yeah. I kind of appreciate what you're saying in the sense of sometimes you just need to take action on something to
just
start
give it a go.
Giving yourself those confidence deposits into, something that you wouldn't have done before. And now you proved to yourself just a little bit more that you were capable. Yeah. And I really appreciate that too. And I think, like you said, with other women watching, it's doing more than you realize, even if they don't pursue aviation, to your point. Yeah. So I really love that. And I also think that this is true for women in leadership, because I would often think to myself, we have women in leadership roles and in business, but it's different when you get a group together. It's different when you have a community that you can rely on. It's different when you're creating a new narrative of what does this look like for us? Because I think men do things differently. And so I'm curious to see where your company ends up in several years as well.
Me too. Hopefully it'll be somewhere good. And, it's funny actually, because I was reflecting on this recently and I was like, you know what, even looking now, it's done what it set out to do. We have so many women who have made friends and, got support groups and support networks through Elevate Her events. And that is what it's supposed to do. That's the end goal, is providing that network and getting those people interested in aviation and giving it a go. So from here on up, it's just like, okay, let's just see how much we can do, how far we can spread this and how many more women we can include. And yeah, I really hope it ends up somewhere good. I have faith that it will do.
Yes. Like you said, it already has. It's just exponential growth has happened for you.
I love Elevate Her. I love it so much. And I love that it's my job. Like who gets to say they get to work with amazing women every day in such a fun, exciting industry? I mean, that's pretty much the dream. I'm very, very happy doing what I'm doing. And in terms of aviation, I would love to just learn as much as I can, experience as much as I can, and just have fun. Like I think as well, there's so much pressure on aviation. There's so much pressure on being the best, doing the perfect landing, doing the perfect radio call, passing all these exams, getting into your ideal job. And we kind of forget that actually we do it because we love it. It's so fun. It's vibrant. It's exciting. It's just peaceful. There's so many lovely things about it. And I never want to lose sight of that. So I know those are quite broad goals, but that's what I would hope for myself.
No, I think that's really powerful what you said, just to have a level of enjoyment. I've been reflecting on that a lot going into this next year and just thinking, how can I enjoy what I'm doing just 5% more and just have a little more fun? Life is short. We hear that all the time, but it's really true. And I would rather go to the end feeling like, gosh, I had such a good time. And for women, especially, because I think a lot of the women, especially who listen to this podcast, are ambitious, motivated, driven. And when you're like that, that's so commendable. But you also have to every once in a while let yourself off the hook and just breathe a little bit.
Crazy, a little bit. I'm definitely good now.
Absolutely. What advice, and then, we'll kind of wrap up here because I know we're getting close to our time, but what advice would you give to somebody if they are pursuing something right now, and whether it's starting a business, pursuing, a pilot's license, anything challenging, and they just feel stuck and like it's really hard and they don't know where to go from here? What would you say to her?
Yeah. So I would say I've definitely been there. And what helps me is really small goals. Like, what do I want to do? I want to get my PPL. Okay, break it down from that. What would I need to do? Okay, you need to do, in the UK, 9 written exams and 45 flying hours. Okay, let's break that down again. So what would I need? I need a flight school. Okay, let's break that down. Let me Google flight schools in my area. Okay, I found one. Well, the next step is to book a trial lesson. Like, break it down as much as you can. Because quite often I get like goal paralysis. when you look at something, you're like, oh my goodness, what do I do to achieve this? And you've got to break it down, just that really, really simple first step. Like, what can I do right now that would inch me towards that goal? Like, is it Googling, where is my nearest flight school? And that may be all you do that day, and that's okay. But it's just making that 1% like, right, okay, I can do this goal. I can achieve that. And then the next goal would be to email them. Okay, I can do that. And like, don't look at the big goal. It's too far away. It's too vast. Break it down to just really, really, really small pieces. And then before you know it, you'll be there.
Yeah. And I love that so much, because we often can get stuck in that, like, gosh, I have this lofty dream, and it just is overwhelming.
Paralyzes you. You don't know what to do from there. It's really hard. And I've definitely experienced that, especially with Elevate Her. I'm looking at everything that we want to achieve, and we're so passionate about it and so fired up for it. And then you look at it and you're like, oh my goodness, how do you do it? And you have to break it down, like, right, okay, let's start with these 4 things. And then if we were going to make these 4 things perfect, what would we do? Break those down again. Okay, so where would we start with those? Break it down to things that you can achieve today. Small things that will just set you on the right path.
Yeah. It's been so wonderful to hear from you, because you have both the aviation experience and the leadership business side of it too. So you understand supporting your own business and that incredible journey. And it's so amazing to kind of see the parallels there as well. So I've just really loved all that you've shared with us today. And I have a tradition on this podcast as we wrap up, that I ask the guests that I'm interviewing to leave a quote or just a reflection or something for the next guest, not knowing who it is. So I'd like to share what was shared from my last guest for you, and then invite you to do the same.
Okay.
So my last guest said, follow what feels right for you, even if it doesn't make sense to anybody else at this time. Sometimes we feel like we're not receiving immediate validation or accolades or whatever it might be. And if we aren't having that impact we want to have, sometimes we think we're on the wrong path. But I think we need to trust that we have chosen something for a reason, or it's been placed upon us, and we know more than we give ourselves credit for, and to look inward before looking for someone else to tell you what you need to be doing next.
Whoa.
Really like that one. I feel like you've used this.
Yeah, that's amazing. And, it is so true. And, like coming back to, again, when I launched Elevate Her, there were lots of people telling me it was the wrong thing to do. Definitely.
Really?
Lots and lots of people, and lots of people afterwards have also since told me it's the wrong thing to do. But if you know it in your heart that I mean, for me, as soon as I thought of it, there was no other option. There was just there was no way around it. Like, I was going to do that. It's like I'd found that complete alignment in what I wanted. And if you feel that, you just have to go, because at the end of the day, the only person you have to live with is yourself. That is it.
Yeah. I just got goosebumps.
No, it's so cute. Maybe that should be my saying. I'll leave that. I'll leave that one. But it's true. Like, the only person you have to live with is yourself. And, like, obviously you kind of mentioned earlier on, like, I've had quite a lot of stuff going on social media, and there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise surrounding whatever you want to do, whether it's launching it, not launching it, whatever you want to do, there's going to be someone saying something. But you just have to live in complete alignment with what you want, and be really honest about it. Be really brutally honest about what you want for yourself. Because that is the only thing that is going to make you happy at the end of the day. And kind of like, as we touched on earlier, it has to be about joy as well. You have to do something that gives you joy. And you wake up every day going, oh my goodness, I get to do this. How lucky am I that I get to do this? So yeah, I feel like maybe I'll leave it at that before I ruin it. But
no, I think that is really perfect. I love the piece about you have to get brutally honest with yourself. Yeah. Tune out the noise and really focus there, because that just doesn't matter. It's going to detract from what ultimately you actually want. And I think we've all probably on some level pursued a path that someone else told us was the right path, and then looked at ourselves at some point and said, is this isn't really giving me what I want.
Yeah.
So there's probably someone listening to this that is experiencing that now. So I think that's,
and also, like, I've been there as well. And like, the thing is that once you get really honest with yourself and you go, you know, I don't want to do this anymore, I want to be doing something else, everything else falls into place. And I know it's really scary. It's really scary to kind of confront that and go, I want to go in a different direction, or I really want to do this scary thing. But once you've aired it, like, you feel so much better. Like, I've never met anyone who's aired it and felt worse. Like, you always feel better. You're always taking yourself more towards that alignment, and people get over it. You know, if you tell them you don't want to do it, people move on like so quick. You build it up into your head be such a big thing, but it's not, you know. And again, the only person you have to live with is you. So as long as you're happy, that's fine.
Oh, that's so good. It's so perfect to land on that. And gosh, Katherine, I am so honored to be joined with you here today, and just can't tell you how much I appreciate you. This has been so inspiring for me. I know that time is our precious resource and just our most like precious asset. And so it's not lost on me that you chose to spend time with me here today and to share what you have with our listeners. And it's just been a joy to chat with you. I really, really appreciate it.
No, thank you so much. I've really, really enjoyed it. And, you know, it's always, I love talking to, you know, other women, other really, you know, really powerful women like yourself. And yeah, it's been an utter joy. So thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for tuning into the show today. And before you go, I just have one quick favor to ask of you. There is a really simple way that you can help support me and help support this show, and that is to hit that follow button on whatever app you're listening to the show on. I'm trying really hard to level up the content and deliver unique value and amazing guests, and just hitting that follow button is the magic that will help continue to empower that. And remember that the world deserves to hear your voice and your stories, and you deserve a place at the top.